What is up, and welcome back to another episode of the Wizards podcast. I'm your host, Greg Finberg, and today's episode, man, we're going to be talking about a blockbuster trade for the Washington Wizards. If you live under a rock and you didn't see, Jordan Poole has been traded from the Washington Wizards in a salary dump to basically exchange contracts. Jordan Poole, Saddiq Bey, the 40th pick, sent to New Orleans for CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a 2027 second-round pick via Chicago. A lot to break down in this episode, and I'm going to just get right into it because I'm already uploading this late, and so I want to get my thoughts out there as much as possible. If you've been following me on Twitter, you know kind of how I feel about the trade. In essence, and I'll get right into it, it's a salary dump. The Wizards are sending out 30 million for Jordan Poole this year and 30 plus million for Jordan Poole the following year. So he's under contract for both 25-26 and 26-27. Same goes for Saddiq Bey, who will leave Washington having never played a game in a Wizards uniform after rehabbing his ACL injury all season. But you send out his about $6.5 million for 25-26 and 26-27. So the Wizards are sending out about 36-37 million across the next two seasons. And they're taking back 43 million. They're taking back 30 million in expiring salary from CJ McCollum, and they're taking back around 12.7 million in expiring salary from a veteran in Kelly Olynyk. But the real thing that they're trying to get here is to clear cap space for 2026 for the offseason there. So obviously this offseason, their cap space isn't that grand. They're gonna next season be paying veterans Marcus Smart, Chris Middleton, Kelly Olynyk, and CJ McCollum, I believe 97 million. So nearly the 100 million invested into four 30-plus-year-olds that are past the prime of their career and still have game, right? All four can contribute to winning basketball. They just can't do it on the levels that they used to. And the Wizards are going to be paying them a lot of money, way more money than they should be getting paid right now, way more money than anybody would be willing to even consider paying them. But this is kind of what you do, right, when you're rebuilding. You take back really bad contracts that nobody wants in exchange for draft capital, in exchange, in the Wizards' sake here, for getting off of certain contracts, and you move forward. So in essence, if you are seeing this trade, if you're a Jordan Poole stan, if you're a Jordan Poole fan, if you just really don't get it, which a lot of Wizards fans did not understand this trade, hopefully that can illustrate it, and hopefully that helps it make sense. This is a salary dump, and I thought, and look, I'll put my right hand up because I did say I thought the Wizards could get multiple ones for Jordan Poole. It turns out that their sole goal in dumping Jordan Poole, I guess, wasn't to bring back draft capital. It was to bring back contracts that allowed them more cap flexibility for the future. And so that's kind of the route they did. So again, you can come and climb me. I've already had a lot of people tagging me on Twitter saying, hey, Greg, didn't you say that they can get multiple ones? Like, I still think to the right team, to the right place, they possibly could have based on some of the deals I saw, especially with Bane. But it turns out that they wanted to salary dump him. They wanted to go this route where they clear cap space. They didn't really get any draft capital in return. Like, they gave up number 40 this year and picked up a future second. So that's kind of a swap in essence. And now you kind of go from there and you say it's a salary dump. And I honestly think that the two more valuable players, maybe Poole and Bey, had more value than McCollum on 30 million and Olynyk, who's getting up there in age, on 13 million. But at the same time, it's pretty clear that Will Dawkins has a strategy. And this is one thing I did get right, is when everyone asked me, Greg, will Jordan Poole get traded? Again, I try to warn people, like, yes, he's 25, he's coming off a great season, but he wasn't drafted by Will Dawkins. And I maintain that if you weren't drafted by Will Dawkins, you can go, honestly, at any time. You can get traded at any time. And it might be shocking at the time, but you can sit back and say, you know what? I understand it. And clearly the same goes for Poole and even Bey, who was a good signing, right, by Dawkins. Cheap deal and clearly enticing enough for the Pelicans to want to take this trade and take on, an additional 36+ million over the next 2 years, each year, so that the Wizards can get their books cleared for 2026. So that's kind of why the Wizards traded and made this deal. Now you can talk about whether they got enough value for a guy like Jordan Poole, certainly 25, coming off a career season, and really well liked by pretty much everyone in that locker room. I mean, you saw across social media the tributes literally 2 minutes after Shams broke the news. You had Bilal Coulibaly posting a pair of videos. It was eventually four pictures slash videos of him and Poole. They were locker mates. They were close. Bilal was JP's rookie, I guess, because they both arrived to the Wizards in 2023. And so clearly Bilal, I wouldn't say upset about the trade, but I'm sure upset that his guy Jordan won't be on the team next year. Certainly Bub Carrington posted about it. Alex Sarr posted about it. So these guys are really close, and that's something that I enjoyed about Jordan Poole possibly coming back was the rapport that he had built with some of the younger guys. So that's obviously something to consider. It's obviously your best player that you're trading. He was your best player last year. He was going to be a lead guard, and so now that he's gone, now that all of those shots are gone, you kind of have to sit back and say, okay, like yes, the salary dump was a part of it, but I doubt that was the only reason they made the trade. Another reason I think they made the trade, and David Aldridge, who is a legend in the game, has been in journalism for decades. He went on Grant and Danny, and he basically said, and I want to get the quote right. He said, "You can't have Jordan Poole stopping up 30 minutes a game if Bub Carrington is your guy. You've got to give him the ball and see what he can do as your lead guard for the foreseeable future." End quote. It's very well said. And I had some people ask me, do you think Bub's a point guard? I think he is a two, but I also think he's a one. I think he's a combo guard because at Pitt, he played on ball. He played off ball. That was half the season. He split with the Wizards. When Jordan Poole was there, Bub played off ball, and he played pretty well off ball. And then when Jordan Poole was out, Bub came back in and played on ball. Like, he can do both, and I think he could be their primary guard in the future. It all depends what they do at 6, right? But I do think, again, this just goes to show how much they have invested in Bub Carrington. They made the Denny Avdia trade to get the multiple ones and all that, but a big part of it was to get high enough to get Bub Carrington. Yeah, that worked out right before the draft last year, and they were like, you know what, we want to position ourselves to draft this guy so bad, we're going to trade Denny Avdia on a great contract. He's only 22. He had a great year, but they invested all that in Bub, and now they're trading Jordan Poole in part for the salary dump and the cap space, and we'll get into that in a second, but also in part to open up lead guard minutes, I would presume, for Bub Carrington. So, they clearly are buying into it. He played all 82 as a rookie. He had a phenomenal year. I think he averaged 17 points, 7 assists on good splits over the last 10 games, and a lot of that was him starting, him playing as a lead guard down the stretch. Ended the season on a game winner in Miami. It's this is a guy that's bought in. He's a good work ethic. I've heard he's been in the gym every single day during the offseason in DC. Him and AJ have been grinding. It's what my guy Troy Halliburton told me. So, certainly you can take the element of, Jordan Poole got traded. They brought back McCollum, but I want to look deeper. And looking deeper, I think that is some storyline that I can, pull out of it, is how much confidence this front office clearly has in Bub Carrington to be a lead guard. It also begs to question all of the hype you had seen over the last couple of weeks about the Wizards and Jeremiah Fears. Fears is a 6'3", speedy, shifty guard that can pressure the rim, get into the lane anytime he wants, facilitate for his teammates, has to improve his three-point shot. But that certainly was an intriguing option. And anytime I brought him up, I was met with, but Greg, they have Jordan Poole. But Greg, Poole's the lead guard. Bub's the other guard. How are they going to fit a guy like Fears in? So now that's not an issue, right? Now that Jordan Poole has been traded, and McCollum is a guard too, but he's only going to be here for a year. So that doesn't mean you can't draft who you want. It opens the door for a guy like Fears. And now I have seen there's more hype about Utah wanting to possibly take Jeremiah Fears and possibly jump the Wizards for him at number 5. But again, I think Washington has put itself in a spot where it's now comfortable sitting at 6 and saying, hey, Brooklyn, who, by the way, just made a trade in that KP trade, taking back some contracts, but also picking up the 22nd pick in the draft. And I'm sidetracking a little bit, but that's okay. Brooklyn now has picks 8, 19, 22, 26, and 27 in this year's draft, plus a plethora of future assets as well. If they don't trade up to get, I guess, Ace Bailey, I don't know what Sean Marks, their GM, would be doing. So they have the ammo, and I think they'll probably jump the Wizards. It could be a bidding war, but again, I think the Wizards would probably be outbid in that scenario. And so if Brooklyn jumps in for a guy like Ace Bailey, again, the way it's unfolding, I think Trey Johnson will still be there. I think Jeremiah Fears will still be there. And from what I've heard, I guess the Wizards would probably take Fears over Johnson. So I don't know. I don't like that. I have Johnson over Fears, but nonetheless, the Wizards are in a spot at 6 where BJ goes 3, Khan goes 4, like many expect. Those are the betting favorites to go there. The Wizards are guaranteed one of either Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson, or Jeremiah Fears. And the way it has apparently unfolded is it'll probably be Bailey or Fears. And if Brooklyn jumps him to get Bailey, then okay. And if not, and Bailey is there, then you clearly take a guy that you probably thought would be gone by 3 and is somehow there by 6. But nonetheless, the point here, I guess I'm trying to make, is that Fears should solely be in play. It pretty clearly ushers out Jordan Poole, brings in another lead guard, and kind of goes from there. You saw last year they traded Denny Avdia out with a 22-year-old and in with the 18, 19-year-old and Bob Carrington. Doesn't play the same position, but that's kind of the thought process of this front office. And in this case, he'll be out with a 25-year-old Jordan Poole making 30+ million for the next 2 years, and in with a 6'3", 18-year-old who should be entering his freshman year of college and can now take over those point guard duties, I guess, alongside of Bob Carrington. So if that's the play, then the Jordan Poole trade obviously makes a ton more sense because there are the salary dump elements of it. But again, there are also the elements of it opens up more minutes for Bob Carrington. And if you draft another guard like Johnson or Fears, it opens up, a lot of minutes for them there in that backcourt. Now, in terms of CJ McCollum, yes, you're taking back a guy that's going to be 34 by the start of the season, but he also averaged 21 points per game last year on New Orleans. If you were one of the few Wizards fans that watched the game in New Orleans with me, both teams basically sucked at that point. CJ dropped 50 on the Wizards. He had 10 threes. This is a guy that still can play ball. And I know Wizards fans don't necessarily care or want to hear that, considering the team probably wants to bottom out next year. But again, they're getting a guy that's still good. And yes, he's making 30 million. But he's a great mentor for a guy like Bub. I mean, they play, I think at least Bub Carrington wants to get to a spot where he plays a lot like CJ, maybe more ball responsibilities, on-ball responsibilities. But Bub shot a lot of mid-range jumpers last year. From 15 to 19 feet, Bub shot 50%. That's kind of CJ McCollum's area of business, especially during the prime of his career alongside Dame. So who better to learn from for Bub than McCollum at the guard position, than Middleton at the forward position, than Smart defensively at the guard position. These are all really good veterans that these guys can learn from for at least half the season if they're not dealt by the deadline. And even if they stay throughout the season, you need good vets on teams. You've seen that in Detroit and how much that can help. And I'm not saying the Wizards are going to have a jump where they're the worst team or second worst team in the league, and then they're making the playoffs and making some noise. That's going to take a while. They don't have a 1A yet. But nonetheless, you have all these young guys that are not running around with their heads cut off. They're behind good, solid veterans. They can learn from these guys. And I think that's another element of the trade that I like. And so hopefully some of this is starting to make more sense to you if you're out on the trade. Again, I've talked to a lot of people on Twitter that just they don't like the fact that they dealt Poole for salary dump purposes. They think they could have gotten a lot more out of it. They think Jordan Poole could have really helped this team and possibly been a piece moving forward. And the front office didn't necessarily give him, the full runway after a really good season to maybe, try to be that lead guard. And I understand that, a lot of people were really attached to Jordan Poole. But I will say, holding on to Jordan Poole after the season he had last year and telling yourself that, he could be your lead guard of the future, that just screams like the old regime, right? Someone that's not forward looking and proactive in these deals. Because let's say you hold on to Jordan Poole, right? And he maybe doesn't have the best season next year and his value isn't where it is. You're not looking at, you're going to have to pay this guy $30 million for the following year as well. And you weren't able to get off of his salary when you had the chance, even if you thought, there's a good chance he wouldn't be here for part of your future. And maybe the old front office would have bought into that and try to kind of rekindle Jordan Poole and push him as that guy who could lead your franchise. This front office clearly didn't see that, and I think they're correct in that take. And it's highly unlikely that Jordan Poole will be your 1A or maybe even 2A on a title contending team. And so they said, you know what, we're going to be proactive and we're going to go out and get salary filler and kind of move on from Poole while we can. I tweeted the other day, I guess yesterday, But what was crazy to me is yes, you have all your people that are upset at the trade, rightfully so. I understand. I'm not going to downplay the people that are upset about it. I'm not one of them, but I'm not going to downplay that. What I will say is crazy is a lot of the same people that were clowning on Jordan Poole in year one and clowning on the Wizards for making that trade and saying, hey, they got one of the most untradeable contracts in the league. He's a negative asset. He's nowhere where he used to be. He's missing all of these shots. There's no way they'll ever be able to get off his contract. They just got to eat it and hope he does okay. And then a year or two later, when he has a breakout second year in Washington, and they are able to get off of his contract without giving up, draft capital. They exchange second round picks, but they're not really giving up all of that plus Jordan Poole like you thought they might after his really bad start to his first year in DC. And you sit here and say, well, after the Wizards traded Jordan Poole, in essence, right, to salary dump, to dump his contract without giving up draft capital, you're mad at it or you're upset at it after you were just clowning on the Wizards for never being able to do it. Like, they got to a point where they felt they were comfortable trading his contract after they probably for a year thought that they would never be able to get off of it. And so now you're working with a clear cap sheet for 2026. And that's kind of where I think the Wizards, and I tweeted contend, and maybe I got a lot of hate for it. Maybe compete is the word that I should have been looking for, compete in 2026. But I'm just going to pull up the Wizards cap sheet real quick in 2026. And this is via Spotrac. In terms of 2026 salaries, Corey Kispert, at least at this point, will be making the most entering 2026-27 at $13.9 million. And again, Corey could be traded very well by tonight's draft, so or throughout the offseason. So maybe it would be another salary that could be off your books as well. Alex Sarr making $12 million, Bilal Coulibaly at $9 million, and then you drop to Bub Carrington at $5 million, AJ Johnson at $3 million, Keyshawn at $3 million, Champagnie at 2.6, and Colby Jones at 2.4. So the last 8 will be rookie deals, and then Corey will be the only one that will be on his second deal. I guess Champagnie technically as well, but he's making a great salary for team friendly purposes. But that's only 8 guys under contract for the Wizards entering 2026. A lot on the rookie deals. Bilal is extension eligible, and after the season we'll see, or even before the season we'll see if the Wizards want to do anything in terms of negotiations. I don't know if he's eligible. I know that Johnny Davis would have been eligible. So maybe I think Bilal actually has another year before they can start negotiating. But again, the cap sheet's clear if you want to extend any of your recent draft picks. And so certainly you'll have, if you're the Wizards, over $100 million in 2026. Like I mentioned, about $97 million will be cleared when the salaries expire on Olynyk, McCollum, Middleton, and Smart. And that's if you can't trade them at the deadline too. Hopefully bring back expiring salaries too. But it's clear that the Wizards are looking to compete after the following season. So 25-26 is going to be another losing year. That's kind of the blueprint. Bottom 4 record guarantees they keep their top 8 protected first round pick. I would assume they're going to try to bottom out, by doing that as well. And again, they traded Jordan Poole, who was their best player, for 2 older veterans. So clearly winning is not the priority at the moment. But it's clear that the Wizards would like to contend. The issue with that is it's never really been the money in terms of attracting free agents to DC. Like, the Wizards had max contract slots to attract guys like LeBron. Kevin Durant wouldn't even take a meeting in his hometown of DC. Like, they've had very, very difficult time in the past attracting free agents to come to DC. And that's even when they had prime John Wall, prime Bradley Beal, Otto Porter, Markieff Morris. Like, they had pieces to compete. They had shown that they can get to the second round and compete in the second round. They just didn't have the pieces to get over the hump. And yet they didn't have, I don't know what, but DC is a good market. They just couldn't attract free agents. And so now you get to the point where you say, okay, we have the cap space. Have we built a good enough culture around the league where a guy wants to come here and play for us in DC? Have you built a good enough team where they feel like if they come here, they can take it and they can compete for a title in DC? Like, the rookies need to show that, like, okay, if you're a veteran and you're signing here for big money, you're coming into a good place where you can contend for a long time, and someone wants to buy into that. So a lot of it is chalked up to having the cap space, which they certainly will have now, but a lot of it's just being able to attract them. Do you have the culture? Do you have the talent that entices someone that would want to come sign here in DC? As of right now, obviously, I have my reservations as well. It's a bold move. But clearly they are confident in their abilities to attract these free agents. And It'll just be, can they get out there and do it? And so it'll be interesting to see sort of how that all unfolds, and that, but hopefully, I've made it. I guess the goal is to make it understandable, to make the Jordan Poole trade understandable. It's a salary dump. They clearly wanted to clear the books for 2026, and that's what they accomplished here. And so, I can understand the people that are upset about trading Jordan Poole. Um, I was one that kind of tried to stress this. Like, I don't think he's a part of the rebuild. He very well could have been, but they clearly decided to go in the other direction to salary dump him. So certainly, a blockbuster, an interesting trade that, I didn't know if the Wizards would be doing this, but they've been really active in terms of trades around the draft. And now they have a pretty open strategy in terms of their roster. Like, they at least know what they're going into the draft with. And I'll read off their roster now. Bub Carrington, Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, AJ Johnson, Marcus Smart, Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, Justin Champagnie, Corey Kispert, Colby Jones, Rashawn Holmes, Anthony Gill, and the number 6 and 18th picks. Tristan Vukcevic is a restricted free agent on that two-way deal. Also, Gill's salary fully non-guaranteed for next year, so they could guarantee it by the 29th of June, and he'd be paid $2.5 million to service another vet. But now they have a lot of vets, and they don't have a lot of roster spots. Maybe they'll, eventually part ways with Gill. Excuse me. And then Holmes only has $250,000 guaranteed. If not, it's about $12 to $13 million next year. So again, those are two guys that you can clear roster spaces with pretty quickly. And I'm sure they'll maybe sign someone in free agency like they did with Bey and Valanciunas. So that's certainly something to note, that roster that I just read off, in terms of what they're looking for in the draft. Again, now that I'm recording this and we kind of touched on the Jordan Poole, I'm going to scroll my feed just to see if I missed anything. No, I mean, the fact that Kelly Olynyk is a Wizard after Game 7, for those Wizards fans that had to suffer through him literally playing like he's prime Dirk in that Game 7, like, it's a pretty full circle moment. But again, like, Kelly Olynyk's good. Like, he always kills the Wizards. I don't know if he's the most defensive-minded big, but I think maybe he can come in here like a Valanciunas. My guy Ben Standing mentioned that too. Like, these are guys that hopefully you can recoup their value. Olynyk's only making 13.7, I think. So, like, you can easily trade a guy like Olynyk at the deadline for, a couple seconds if he has a really good season. McCollum, Middleton, probably harder to trade because they're making $30+ million and they're both going to be 33, 34. That might be tough. So Smart, Olynyk, with the way that they're making money, I think those could be your trade pieces. Kispert as well. But I just foresee the other two being a little difficult. But yeah, I guess that's kind of where I have it with the Poole trade. I'm trying to make sure I didn't forget anything, because I'm going to be annoyed at myself if I did. But yeah, that's kind of it. And now I'm going to use this as kind of a little pre-draft filler to kind of fill you guys in on stuff before the draft. Because by the time I post this, it'll hopefully be like 9:30, 10 Eastern time, and it'll be a nice listen to before the draft. So that's the Jordan Poole trade. Shocking trade. I didn't expect it, at least at this point, but it happened. And that's kind of my thoughts / kind of, an explainer piece on why the Wizards, I guess, did it, why Will Dawkins did it. I mentioned in terms of the draft, Brooklyn has 5 firsts now after they got into on the KP trade. So I, again, think that their team to monitor is someone that could jump the Wizards. I mentioned this on last pod, if you watched that one, that I think if the Wizards did trade up, it would have to be in a bidding war with Brooklyn, because, Brooklyn has all those assets and that ammo with 5 firsts, and they can trade like 8, 19, 22 to move up, with a team like Charlotte that maybe wants a little bit more of a chance to take more pieces in this. And maybe they think that Khan will be there at 8 or Malawak will be there at 8, and they trade back. Or maybe with Utah, Brooklyn wants to jump them. They have all of that ammo. They also have Cam Johnson they can dangle as well. But what the Wizards have to offer to a team like Utah or Charlotte is it's a way smaller of a move back, especially with Utah, which I think would be where the trade could be. Brooklyn's offering you all of those first, but you're also moving back 3 slots to where maybe you won't still be able to get a guy like Trey Johnson. Maybe you won't be able to get a guy like Fierce, who they apparently really covet. So if you're Utah, you could trade back 3 spots to 8. You could pick up, 8, 19, and maybe 22 or 26, but you're not guaranteed you're going to get one of the guys that you want. Versus with Washington, maybe you pick up, a plethora of seconds plus number 6. you're moving back one spot, and you could still take Fears. You could still take Trey Johnson, and you're getting the guy you want guaranteed, and you're getting all of those picks. Because if they make the trade, right, if you're Utah, you clearly don't want Ace Bailey. That's why Washington or Brooklyn would be moving up. And so I think, while Washington maybe can't offer as many firsts as Brooklyn, what they can offer is a way smaller move back, and they can offer a guarantee that since Utah doesn't want Bailey, they guarantee to take their guy at 6 while picking up those assets. So maybe that's more enticing. We've seen Will Dawkins trade up each of the last 2 drafts to get Bilal in 2023, to get Bub, and to get Keyshawn in 2024. So again, trade up this, from 6. Well, I don't know if that'll happen. That's certainly on the table. And then you look at 18 as a trade up as well. Now that they have, obviously, assets that they don't have 40, but they have, I think 14 tradable seconds and 6 tradable firsts. So they can certainly be aggressive. They can dangle Kispert as well for a slight move up. So, they have the pieces to be able to do these trades. And again, the trades aren't official until July 6th, so they can still reroute McCollum, and they could still reroute Olynyk in 3-team trades. We saw the same thing happen when they got Bilal. They somehow recouped and rerouted that in the Beal trade just to make contracts work. So it was a 3-team deal there with Indiana and Phoenix. I could definitely see something like that happening as well to make everything, work monetarily and financially. But that's definitely a storyline to consider, is the trade-up scenario now that Brooklyn has all the ammo, and now that Bailey could realistically fall to 5 or 6. That's definitely something to monitor. Another thing to monitor, the Philadelphia Inquirer's Keith Pompey tweeted, sources told him that the Washington Wizards hope Ace Bailey's refusal to work out for teams during the pre-draft process will cause him to slide, obviously, to number 6. He said a source said Washington benefited from the same approach, as with Alex Sarr last year, where he fell from 1 to 2 after refusing to work out with the Hawks. Keith finished by saying the Wizards have been impressed by Bailey for some time, not concerned with some of the poor shot selection at Rutgers, and they're very, very high on him. He said some Washington executives even had Bailey rated higher than number 1 pick Cooper Flagg in high school. So clearly he has some fans in the front office, as Keith is saying. Again, I don't think the Wizards are going to be too concerned about some of the pre-draft stuff that he's been going through, not being the only U.S.-born athlete or prospect to not work out for an NBA team in the pre-draft process. It's clear that this is kind of his agent. All the reporting I've seen, my guy Greg Rosenstein at NBC Sports put out a nice article that he interviewed, Peichel, the coach at Rutgers, and all the quotes were just glowing about Bailey. And yes, it's his guy, but I've seen other articles from other people saying that Bailey's teammates like him, that he's just kind of a fun-loving, energetic kid and a little immature, and that can be great at times because he's always messing around and goofing around, and that's kind of nice on a team, but sometimes he kind of needs to rein it in and be more serious, I guess, at practices and shoot-arounds and games and stuff. But nonetheless, I'm not concerned about the pre-draft stuff with Bailey. The upside is just too hard to pass on. And I think the Wizards would view it in that same light. If Bailey gets them at 6, maybe they even have to give up some assets to outbid a team like Brooklyn. I'm not too concerned about anything with Ace Bailey. I think if he's on the board for the Wizards at 6, or if they trade up to 5 or 4, that he's going to be the pick. And I think if it's not him, from stuff, and Troy Halliburton said this as well, the Wizards really like Jeremiah Fears. I think, honestly, they would take him over Trey Johnson. Me, personally, I've Trey 3 on my board. I don't think you can pass on that scoring and that shot making, especially from 3. But again, it seems like he's not necessarily the Wizards type of prospect, and Fears and Bailey more so are. So I guess those would be the 2 betting favorites. And if you're the Wizards right now, you're guaranteed to get one of the 2. So I think that the Wizards, honestly, after getting hosed in the lottery, are in a really, really good spot entering tonight's NBA draft. I would say it's about a 75% chance that Ace Bailey is available at number 6. And I think the 25% chance he's not is if a team like Brooklyn jumps into the top 5 to go over Washington and to trade up and take Ace Bailey. And look, if you get outbid by Brooklyn because they have all those assets, what are you going to do? They did a really good job of accumulating a stockpile of picks to eventually go get their guy. The Wizards just can't compete. They don't want to trade their own extra firsts. So they couldn't do it. And that's fine by me. If they stayed put and got Fears at 6 or Johnson at 6, I think that'd be a phenomenal draft. I've also seen Utah in every mock, by the way. And I will say, the mock drafts, I think, are for the most part, obviously trying to predict what they think the drafts will be. And guys at ESPN, guys at The Athletic are the best in the business. They're all locked in on all of the best information and intel. And I will say that ESPN pretty consistently, and there have been no trades in these mock drafts with the Athletic as well, but ESPN has consistently for the last week and even last night mocked Ace Bailey to the Wizards. Same with the Athletic, and they both had Trey Johnson on the board at that same point because they have Jeremiah Fears at number 5 to the Utah Jazz. They're a team that had him in for a second workout, so that could be another spot where maybe Utah is out there and saying, you know what, we know if we trade back with Brooklyn, no matter how many firsts they give us, we can't take Fears because Washington will be there and they'll take them. And if they don't, then New Orleans will be there and they'll take them. And so we don't want to do that. We want to guarantee we get them. And so Washington's more enticing if we're going to trade because we can move back one spot. They get Bailey, we still get Fears, and we get assets. Or maybe they're just, you know what, we don't like what we're getting. We're going to stick it at 5 and we're going to take Fears. And then Washington's there and they can scoop up Bailey. So I think the Wizards are in a pretty win-win situation when it comes to the 6th pick, and I think that'll show by the draft. It's going to be definitely nerve-wracking, and it's going to be a lot of sitting around and watching to see if trades are made while teams are on the clock trying to figure out, do I need to make a move to trade up? It's definitely going to be intriguing there, but that's kind of some of the intel that I have. I think the Wizards, for all the negativity surrounding the poor lottery showing and for all of the negativity getting the worst possible pick they can get, it seems like Washington, if you ask them today, would be pretty comfortable where they are. And so they're going to add a really great player. I'd say probably 65% I'd be leaning Ace Bailey. I'd say about 25% I'd be leaning Jeremiah Fears, and this is without trades. And then maybe about 10% I'm leaning Trey Johnson. Certainly going to be intriguing. If you had to ask me to make a last-second prediction, I think it goes Flag, Harper, Edgecombe, Knipple. Brooklyn trades up to get 5, and they take Bailey, and the Wizards sit at 6 and take Fears. That's a trade-up option. And if there are no trades, I think Utah stays put it at 5. And who am I to not trust some of the mock draft intel? I think they pass on Bailey. I think they take either Fears or Johnson. I probably lean Fears there. And the Wizards are at 6, and they get Ace Bailey, who many believe is the consensus 3rd prospect in this draft, and they sit at 6, and they still get a guy that has some of the highest upside that we've seen in years, and certainly of this draft class. So that would be a pretty phenomenal start to the draft. And then you sit back at 18, and you can take best player available. Washington could certainly trade up. If a guy like Queen or Yegor Demon, Noah Senge, who I've seen consistently mocked within the lottery, maybe he somehow falls to them at 18. Certainly guys like Thomas Sorber. I don't think Yakuchonis will be there. But Rasheer Fleming, there's going to be really, really good talent at 18. And I would be shocked if the Wizards, held on to it and didn't try to make a move, at least to trade up. But I'm confident, again, that this front office will find talent at that spot. They haven't, dropped the ball at all. They've hit on all 5 of their first round picks, and none of them have shown that they can be a top option, but they've shown that they're going to be solid players in the league. And Koulibaly, Vukcevic, Sarr, George, Carrington, and even trading for AJ Johnson, he's had some flashes there. So I certainly think the Wizards are in a really good spot, and their future outlook, their cap sheet, and their vision is clear by the day. They want to have this team filled of guys that they drafted and guys that they've brought in here on their own, younger guys as well, and they want to have their salary cap open for 2026 to be able to compete. And I didn't say contend there. I amended my statement to compete because it's going to take a while still. But in 2026, it's clear that they're looking for some semblance of being a competent team. I'm going to look up 2026 free agents NBA real quick because I want to see who the Wizards can realistically target in 2026. I guess Brad is a player option, but LeBron, I guess, is an unrestricted free agent. If you want to get your hopes pretty high, same with Kevin Durant, but he's going to sign that massive extension with Houston. A bunch of player options there, like Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Zach LaVine, Dame. Again, I don't think any of these guys, Bradley Beal, these are guys that likely won't be coming to DC, right? But in terms of unrestricted free agents like Van Vliet, Kyrie, but he just signed the extension, I guess. Harden, Ayton, De'Aaron Fox is someone that I saw dropped a lot. McCollum will be a free agent, obviously. You got guys like Porzingis, Randall, Jaren Jackson Jr. is enticing. John Collins, Terry, like Anthony Simons. So like there are certainly going to be good free agents. Now, will they want to play in Washington? There's probably not a high chance, but a lot can change if the Wizards play well this year and their rookies show that, like, okay, this is a destination where we can definitely spend. And even for OKC, it took them a while to be able to track free agents, right? Like, they needed to show that they could be a number one seed. They needed to show they had a 1A. They needed to show that they can compete in the playoffs, which they did. And so before that playoff run, they really didn't attract many free agents. And then you get into the offseason, you trade for Caruso, obviously, but you sign Hartenstein, which was kind of the glue that held that team together on both ends of the floor. And you're able to attract there in a small market like OKC. DC is a way bigger market. They've just had trouble for some reason attracting free agents. So clearly the money won't be the issue. The Jordan Poole trade was so they can create 100 million plus in cap space for 2026. Now it's just a matter of developing talent throughout the course of this year, drafting at 6 and 18, guaranteeing you get a bottom 4 record next year to secure your top 8 protected pick. And then at that offseason, it's kind of like, all right, let's go. Let's try to kind of take this rebuild to the next step. We're no longer losing. We're now trying to win. And I don't know if they can contend. Again, probably use the wrong word there, but compete at least. Try to go from point A to point B and kind of take this rebuild to the next level. And that'll be where you spend your money and you try to bring in some free agents or maybe trade for some guys and try to start contending or I guess competing from there. So that's kind of the plan with the Jordan Poole trade. So I understand those that won't understand it or I guess don't like it, but at least you can understand it. So that's going to do it for this episode. This Jordan Poole trade recap and a little bit of a preview into tonight's NBA draft. Apologies for the late upload, but I will say I'm going to have an upload again tonight after round 1 of the draft and tomorrow after round 2 of the draft, recapping kind of the whole thing. I'm also going to be doing a Twitter Spaces, I believe, probably after the Wizards pick at number 18 if they hold on to it. And if they move up after their second selection, I will be doing Twitter Spaces as well. So be on the lookout for that. If you enjoyed the last one, you'll certainly enjoy this, where you can come on and share your thoughts. I'll certainly share my thoughts to begin with. But again, that's going to do it for this episode. Jordan Poole traded. Jordan Poole out, Saddiq Bey out, 40th pick out, CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a 2027 second via Chicago in. Certainly a pretty shocking trade, but that's kind of where the Wizards are at. They're prioritizing cap flexibility, and they're being proactive for these moves. So I understand it. I kind of like the move. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But that's going to do it for this episode. Stay tuned for the draft coverage. See what the Wizards do at 6 and 18. Hopefully we come away with Ace Bailey and someone else good in the first round. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Go Wiz.